Good afternoon, and welcome to our Spring Ohigan service. We are fortunate to have with us today special guest minister, Reverend Dr. Kenji Akahashi. Welcome to Enmanji. We celebrate Ohigan service twice a year, once in the spring and again in the fall. Ohigan means the other shore of enlightenment, or the Pure Land, which stands in opposition of this shore. Samsara, or the world of delusion. Standing on that other shore is Amida Buddha, who is beckoning us to cross over. Reverend Dr. Kenji Akahashi is today's guest speaker. In 2007, Reverend Dr. Akahashi sold his dental practice. 3 years later, Sensei earned his master's degree from the Institute of Buddhist Studies in Berkeley. In 2012, he received his Kyoshi certification in Japan. In 2013, at the age of 71, Reverend Akahashi was appointed resident minister of the Buddhist Temple of San Diego. Sensei is now retired and living in San Jose. Let us begin with quiet meditation. Please sit quietly and place your hands together in Gasho. Sensei will ring the bell to begin and end the meditation. Continuing the cycle of birth and death, or samsara, comes about, certainly as a result of the ties that bind us to feelings of doubt. But entering the realm of uncreated tranquility or quiet transcendence results from the mind of true entrusting and the grasping of interdependence.
Namo Amida Butsu.
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 Namo Amida Butsu. Please stand for the opening gatha. It will be Ohigan 1 on page 190. And this was written by Reverend Yamaoka. He was the past BCA bishop, and he passed away in December. Standing for the reading of the threefold refuge on page 10. Difficult is it to receive a human form, now we are living it. Difficult is it to hear the Dharma of the Buddha, now we hear it. If we do not cross over to the truth in the present life, in what life shall we cross over? Let us, with sincerity and true reverence, take refuge in the three treasures of the truth. I take refuge in the Buddha. May we together with all sentient beings awaken to the great way of enlightenment and to the unsurpassed intent of Amida Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. May we together with all sentient beings into the storehouse of the Dharma, becoming like the rivers of ocean. I take refuge in the Sangha. May we together with all sentient beings become units in true accord, in harmony with all things. The peerless, profound, and wondrous Dharma is rare to encounter, even in many hundreds and thousands of kalpas. Now we are privileged to hear and receive it. Let us thoroughly understand the true meaning of Tathagata's teachings. Namo Amida Butsu.
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 Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida
We will continue with Samujo on page 24 of the Purple Book, a dedication to Sutra chanting led by Reverend Akahoshi. Then we'll follow with Jusege on page 93.
We are gathered here today in the light of Amida's compassion to observe Spring Ohigan. This is the season where the length of day and night are equal. This balance of light and dark, cold and heat, symbolizes the middle path that leads from this shore of ignorance and discontent to the other shore of awakening and bliss. We express appreciation for the 6 paramitas which guide us toward this awakening. In gratitude, we recite the Nembutsu. Gasho. Namo Amida Butsu.
Namo Butsu.
Namo Amida Butsu.
Namo Butsu.
Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda. You say it.
We will now listen to a Dharma message from Reverend Akabushi.
Hi, I was going to say good morning, good afternoon. Thank you very much for this invitation to speak here today. Nero called me and Daryl, Yagi, and I have been friends for a long time. I think we met each other in high school. So it's a long time. It's been at least 30 years, right, Daryl? Well, my math might not be right, but anyway, I'm really happy to speak here at Ohigan. And as you know, there are 2 services per year, as Donna said. And so to me, Ohigan is a very special service. And we know it because there are 2 services. We don't have 2 services for Hanamatsuri or Bodhi. But for Ohigan, there are 2 services. Well, it must be important. And I think what it points out for me is balance. And that it is really at the spring and fall equinox when the days, the light, our days and nights are even, temperatures. And, so it's a thought of balance. And the way I've been talking about Buddhism, especially Shin Buddhism, is that it's a practice of being balanced. Often people talk about, enlightenment and so forth, but I think as lay people, we should think about it as balance, because that's something we could do. I broke my leg last year, and one of the things I had to relearn is how to balance, and I'm still trying to learn that, and realizing how important it is to balance just to walk, and I didn't realize that before, but I took it for granted. But anyway, before, I think in Honen's time, we talk about this shore and the other shore. We sometimes think of this life and then death, the other shore, and that, 6 paramitas or some things get us to the other shore. But I think for us, let's say contemporary Americans, I look at things a little differently. I've just finished writing a book on the contemporary interpretation of Buddhism. And the reason I've done this is that we're reading words that were written 800, 500 years ago, and in a different culture. And so it's been difficult for us to really start to understand some of these words because they no longer have much meaning. Even someone asked me about the sutras, and I don't think anyone who really understands Japanese could interpret the sutras because they're written in an old form and they're symbolic, they're poetic. One word whole, could stand for many different things. And as an example, if I were to do this, what am I saying here? Some people.
Sit down, quiet down.
Well, come here, oide, right? Some people, oide, that means come here in Japan. Now, for modern Americans, what are we doing?
Sitting down.
Goodbye, yes.
Go away.
So some of the things we think we're communicating in, what Shinran wrote to us, giving a different approach. We're saying goodbye. And so, and this is again why I think it's necessary to bring things up to date, to explain things in a little different way that's not so traditional, but that in a way that we can relate in our activities today. And I'm thinking this is for our children, our grandchildren, and anyone interested in Buddhism that really doesn't have much of a background in Japan or some of the culture, some of the things that we've taken for granted for many years. And so I've been talking about these things for many years, but I've written it down. I don't know when and if this book will be published, but hopefully it will be helpful. And some of the things I'm saying in this writing, and some of the things I may say today may be strange to some people who have been in the tradition because it's so kind of outside of the lines where we usually color. But I do think it's pertinent because one of the things we often hear is kodomo no tameni, for the sake of the children. We're always concerned about our children. Well, for our convenience, we're leaving our children plastic, right? As they eat sushi, they're going to be eating bits of plastic. And then there's global warming and, these terrific fires that we're having and floods change it. So what we're leaving our children actually is not so good. And it's because we want cheap gas right now, but we're not thinking so much about the future. And so, when we say for the sake of the children, we have to be a little more thoughtful about what it is we are leaving for them. And I think Shin Buddhism is something we could leave them. And if you can explain it in a way that's relates. Because this has helped people both 800, 500 years ago, throughout Japan, and now it's throughout the world, in Europe, South America, here in North America. But I think it needs to be interpreted in a way that makes sense for us. And so one thing I want to point out, well, there are two things actually. When we talk about the differences in 13th century and 15th century Japan, people were concerned with one thing. Anyone watching Shogun on TV? A loss of life is common. You start to draw your sword and you have to cut your head off. Death was all over. If you got a little infection, often people died, childbirth and all that. People were concerned with life and death. There was almost no in between. And yet, what are we concerned about today? Convenience, Fortunately, through science and medical history and all the research that's been done, we've, really brought the threat of death down to a minimum. And I keep saying, if I die, I'm going to sue somebody. Because, it shouldn't happen. My wife might make a lot of money from that. But what I'm saying is it's secondary. So now what people are worried about when they talk about Zen, and you see Zen all over on TV and all the media, they're talking about how to be calm, how to be more convenient, how to be stress-free. So the message is a little different from, what people were saying even 500 years ago. And so going from this shore to the other shore, I think is going from a place of being unaware to awakening. And this awakening, I think, is what we need to see whether what we're passing on is not only, our plastics, which is great, we can't do without it, and yet we have to figure out ways of, dealing with that, the global warming and so forth. Now, I think the other thing of awakening and going to this other shore is not a one-time deal. It's not living and dying. I look at awakening as being a common thing that we might do often. I wake up every day. I don't wake up knowing everything, but I think this going from this shore to the other shore, from ignorance to awareness, can be a very common thing. Every time we realize a certain truth, we wake up. And so this thing that we're kind of observing today on Ohigan is a situation where we're realizing that we're off balance and we're becoming balanced. And that to me is an awareness, an awakening. So again, it's a little different. Now, the one thing I think will make things clear for many people, and as I look out, many of us understand these things, but I think for our grandchildren or people who don't have a background, it's simpler to just say that as Shin Buddhists, what we focus on is the reality that we have been receiving things. There's this whole attitude that we got to achieve something. This is the American way. I did it myself. I did it my way. And yet, as Shin Buddhists, we look at something a little differently and realize what we have received. And that's what I'll be trying to talk about. And I get this from Shinran in one of the chants we might chant at Ohigan in January or November, whenever Ohongo is observed, is Shoshingen, which is something that Shinran wrote in his Togyo Shinsho. And in that second chapter on practice, he says this: still the clouds and mist of greed and desire, anger and hatred, covers always the sky of true and real Shinji, or truth. But though the light of the sun is veiled by clouds and mist, beneath the clouds and mist, there is brightness, not dark. Now, isn't that very optimistic? It's a bright feeling. Sometimes we think of Buddhism being negative because it talks about suffering. But Shinran says, we keep our ego desires. He worked for 20 years trying to eliminate that and realized he couldn't. But beneath all this ego desires of hatred and ignorance, there's brightness, not dark. And then he goes on, he says, one immediately leaps crosswise, closing off the 5 evil courses. What happens when we leap crosswise? Let's demonstrate something. Put your hand out so you hide my face. give you a little relief. Hide my face, okay? Now, if I were to eat crosswise, here I am. So I think what he's saying is we just have to change our view. We have the same situation, but if we change our perspective, we have a different view of life. So this is where I think that what Shin offers is that it says there's another way of looking at life. And that as lay people, this is something we can do. And so he goes on, Shinran goes on to explain how we do this. How do we make the shift to see the, let's say, the brightness under the clouds? He says, one is naturally brought to enter a stage of the definitely settled, solely saying the Tathagata's name constantly. That's saying the Buddha's name constantly. One should respond with gratitude to the universal vow of great compassion. So he says, respond with gratitude, saying the name. And, all we need to do, as you know, we do it all the time in services, saying the name or Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, or the short Namo Das. And so he says that's all we have to do. Well, for many young people and some people who are new to the tradition, it's hard to say Namo Amida Butsu. And we even, a lot of us in the tradition pronounce it in a different cadence or different syllable than what is written. And even if we said it, sometimes the children don't really understand what it means. And it's like saying, well, just say abracadabra. Well, what happens? If you say abracadabra and nothing happens, it loses its value, right? Well, Namo Amida Butsu. If nothing happens, it loses its value. And so what I found, using Shinran's words, is that the most effective way I have found for new people is to say the word thank you. I don't have to explain that, what it means. Every language, every culture has that in their own form. And thank you means that we are responding to realizing that we received something, a gift from someone else. So this is not the whole meaning of Nembutsu, Namo Amida Butsu, but it's part of it, and it's very important in the Shin life, that we have a life of gratitude. And if you look at the BCA website or some of the things where it says BCA, it says a life of gratitude. And so I think this word thank you really kind of is one way as an entry into the understanding of Nembutsu, Namo Amida Butsu. And again, looking at Shinran's proclamation of the clouds and the brightness beneath it, I think it's a shift from please, our ego, we want things, certain things, or we want things to go our way, so forth. It goes from please to thank you. So shift from please to thank you. And it's not only a shift, it's the balance. It never goes to all thank you. We still have a lot of please. And so again, it's just the balance. And I think Shinran came to this after 20 years as a monk, because as you realize at the time of the Buddha, if you wanted to follow his teachings, all we had to do was shave our heads, turn in our nice clothes, and wear a robe, and just carry a begging bowl. You didn't have to worry about anything. Just every morning you went out, the last meal you ate every day, probably once a day, which is before noon. Slept on the mat, and so you just had a robe, a begging bowl, and a sleeping mat. Didn't have to worry about things. And so now we see some people practicing some Buddhist practices that are meant for monks, and yet we do it on a part-time basis. And saying that meditation, mindfulness, all this is good. But Shinran worked at this as a Tendai monk for 20 years and realized he could not suppress his passions or his ego desires. And so as his Honen's community was disbanded and through a kind of a government, or anyway, due to the other older temples being jealous, they were disbanded, and he was defrocked and sent out from Kyoto to be exiled, and he had to live among common people like us. And he realized that, the Buddha also had given a pathway for ordinary people, and he found that in the larger sutra, which we know is our main sutra. And again, this is where some of the words come from that he says. And so it is this whole thing about receiving. So how do we wake up? I want to point out three things here. Three ways we could think about as common people. One, and many of us do this before meals, itadakimasu, when we remember. And I have a friend that says his grandchildren often say, and I often say, itadakimasu, too late, after you start eating. Oh, itadakimasu, too late. But itadaku is to honor and respect and really express appreciation for all the things that went into providing this meal. And we can think of, initially just things like the farmer who grew the vegetables or animals, but then there's a sacrifice of life, of vegetable life, and then all the work that went into growing this, harvesting it, bringing it to market, how did it get to, the places that made the rice into, an edible form and so forth. Also the places, the stores that sold this, and it might be the chef or mother or wife or husband who cooked this. I don't cook, so I say wife. So all these things went into making this meal for us. So when we say itadakimasu, it spans this whole area of being grateful for what has been done for us. And I call that the efforts of others. A second area, and this encompasses a lot, but the second thing I think that would help us make this shift is, where we are as people. As I think some of you know, I was a dentist before becoming a minister, and I was really proud because I went to UCSF, what I feel is one of the better dental schools in the U.S., and was very proud because I did it myself. I really sacrificed a lot in high school and especially college, not doing a lot of fun things, studying, and so, I was really proud. But in later life, I started to think back and realize that actually I had some support. My mother, I hadn't even thought of this at the time, but she went from a part-time job to a full-time job at a children's clothing store. And I remember my father working 7 days a week after we got out of camp. He had a green grocery when he was incarcerated with 125,000 Japanese Americans, all Shin Buddhists. And not all Shin Buddhists, but when I'm saying all Shin Buddhists were taken from whatever they had and recovered. So that's another thing that we can look at, that this teaching can help us through any disaster. Think of the fires in Lahaina and so forth. But anyway, when he got back in, I think, 1947, we finally got back to San Jose, he worked for someone else's store as a clerk. But the teachers I had through high school and university, and the coaches, friends, then I had to think of all the dentists who created the dental school, all the professors who gave the information, all the industries that helped form these universities and schools, all the people that contributed to the formation. So I'd like you to think of what you did in life, your proudest achievement. And we achieved this. But think of all the factors that went into supporting you in that. And again, we may just take it for granted. I work for this big company, so-and-so, Microsoft, or whatever it might be, IBM. But it took a lot of things for that to happen. And so whatever it is we achieved, there's been a whole host of things that supported us. So again, we received this. We did our part in achieving what we needed to be confident. But there was a whole list of things. And so you might think about that sometimes, that, who supported me in reaching the point where I am? And this is part of Nikon therapy. This is the Japanese psychology. But again, this is another example. And I use the words, the me is actually we. We think of me, but we're actually in a group setting, whatever we do. I like to, always remind people of this, and my wife likes to remind me of the same thing. When I bring my glass of water to the dinner table, and she says, "Me is we," and then I realize she didn't bring her glass of water. So it gets a little dangerous when you preach, but you don't walk your talk. So, and then the third thing we can do to really make the switch is to be here at the Jodo Shinshu temple. Because this is what Shinran would say is a dojo, a place of practice, where we realize and emphasize this point of receiving. Because everywhere else we're talking about achieving, be number one and so forth. But here it's about community, that we are part of a group. And the things that we have, the chanting we have, we don't have to really understand the words. As I said, it's difficult to translate. But just chanting as individuals, we voice as one group, oneness. Different individual tones, volume, enunciation, but we're chanting as one group. So it's just the experience of chanting with everyone else. This is what I feel is one of the main purposes of chanting. And we also realize that these chants have been chanted for centuries, for thousands of years, perhaps in different languages, but it comes from the Buddha. Again, we're just doing something that connects us with the past, and we hope that we can pass these things on to our children, that these are not just foreign words that we do as a ritual, that it is a practice of being with each other, perhaps not understanding the words, but realizing when we come to a temple, we do this thing where we realize that one voice really contributes to the whole. And so it is important that we attend the temple to see how Jodo Shinshu life is actually lived. And again, from the minister we hear words of the Buddha. And hopefully the minister doesn't go on and on for hours about that, but anyway, this is where we do hear the words of the Buddha. And at the temple, we read? Three treasures. And I'm kind of paraphrasing it, but I like to think of the words of rare, difficult, and wondrous is it to be born into human life. Now we live it. Rare, difficult, and wondrous is it to hear the teachings of the Buddha. Now we hear it. Let us thoroughly understand the true meaning of the Buddha's teaching. So it says right here, we have already received it. We've been born. How did that happen? We're hearing the words of the Buddha 2,500 or 600 years ago. We're hearing it. Not everyone can hear or know about that. So we're receiving. And we're not really achieving things. That's not what we're about. So what comes after saying thank you? We can say thank you, I really appreciate it. Again, in our service, I think later we'll probably sing Ondo-san, yeah. And the words there are what? That the depth of gratitude I owe my Dharma teachers, I will express until my bodily form is finally shattered. It's gratitude to repay our teachers, and it's service to others. And our teachers are not just the Dharma school teachers or ministers, but it's everyone that we've gained from. And as I said, in our progress in life, we realize that we've received so much. So we're repaying that service to others. And we have this whole concept of the Bodhisattva, who says that I will not become awake until all of the beings are awake. And so we're about helping others wake up. And the things we do at a temple is service to others. Now, I don't know if you have, you probably had the JYBA and Dharma School and so forth, but the things that we do, we're serving the community. And things that we, have fundraisers for disaster relief. Seattle's temple had a fire, Lahaina, different things have happened, and it's all about serving others. Now, there may still be some who complain about life. Yeah, there are good things that happen, but there are complaints. And of course, the Buddha said that all things are impermanent. But the other thing he said was, all life, as he looked at life, that everything's connected. So again, 2,500 years ago, when the Buddha really sat down and looked at life and became enlightened, he saw that everything in life is impermanent, and we know that. Things change, and everything is connected. Now, more recently, Einstein said that all things have two forms, mass and energy. Now, we may not think about that too much, but think about, a tree burning, a limb, for having a little fire. The reason it burns is that what it gives off is energy in the form of heat and light. Now, what happens to the tree? It turns to ashes. The form changes, but the energy is given off. And the reason it's able to give off is that it took energy throughout its life. As a seed, it took in energy through water, light, nutrients. And so from a seed, it grew to a little sapling and then to a big tree. And from that tree, we can burn that wood and release that energy. What else is in life? We humans. So we have mass, we can call it body, and we have energy, which I like to call spirit. And so this Amida Buddha, which, as Americans, we see things more in the Christian way of a theistic God or something. I think of Amida as just spirit energy, and that we do have mass, that will perish. For some of us, if we're lucky to go, not even 100 years, but time is limited. But there's another part that goes on, and that's in the energy. Now, where did that come from? I'll read a poem by Mitsuo Aida, and he talks about where this came from. My father and mother, altogether 2. Parents of my father and mother, altogether 4. Parents of parents, altogether 8. If I count in this way back to 10 generations, altogether 1,024. What about back to 20 generations? To my surprise, over 1 million people. From the infinite past, a life baton has passed on. Now, here, I live with my baton. This is my life. This is your life. And so the question is, what do we do with our baton, our life baton? And I actually, I like math, so I went back another 10 generations, 20 generations would be about 500 years, which is the time of Renyo. And if we go back another 10 generations, that's almost 800 years at the time of Shinran. And as Aida says, 1 million people, if we go back 30 generations, it would take 1 billion people to make each one of us. Not a perfect pairing to make me and to make each of us. So when we complain about life and think about, boy, if I won the lotto, things would be great. We have already won the lotto. We forgot to look at the ticket in our pocket. It took 1 billion people, almost 800 years, to make each one of us. So what are we really complaining about? What do we pass on? So I think a simple explanation of Shin Buddhism is to appreciate what I have, to balance the desire for what I don't have. So again, it's just shifting from please to thank you. And thank you is a way that really expresses appreciation for the gifts of life, experiences. Namo Amida Butsu expresses the appreciation for the gift of life. And so I want to close with a little story of a farmer who had a little farm and was struggling in Japan. And he had to work hard every day, but life was tough. And every morning he would wake up, and as the sun behind him shone, across his belly, he lived on one side of the valley, and I'm thinking about the Santa Clara Valley where I grew up. If you're on the East Foothills and look on the West Foothills, it's a long way. But every morning he would see way across on the western side a rich person's home and wall that was covered in gold, because every morning the sun would shine against it and he would see this gold wall. And so he thought of an idea, and he asked his wife, you think it would be wise if I made this trek all the way across the valley this man is so rich, his walls are covered in gold. And if I told him our story, being poor and hard work we're doing, he might, give us some gold so it makes life easier. And she thought it was a good idea. So she packed his lunch and made a little gourd, some tea. And so early one morning, again, he started off from his side. You could see the golden walls way across the valley. And then at lunchtime, he stopped and ate his musubi, boshi, and had a little tea. And he was halfway there. And finally, toward the end of the day, as the sun was starting to set, he started to climb the other side. And as he climbed up, he was getting very excited because he was just rounding the last corner where he would, see this great mansion and house, and, this golden wall. And so when he turned the last corner, he looked, and his mouth dropped wide open. And he gasped, because he didn't see a beautiful golden wall. What he saw was an abandoned shack. And there was a window that faced east the way he lived. And he realized that it was the sun reflecting off that gave the appearance that this house was covered in gold. And he was so dejected, all he could do was turn around, sit on this rock, and look back at his house, which was way across the valley. And he was so dejected, all he can think of, this is not what I expected. And then when he looked up to see where his house was, he realized that as the sun was setting behind him, it was reflecting off a window of his house. And he saw the golden reflection. And he realized that although he had a hard life, he had a wife, a couple of kids, life was very difficult, and yet he really saw the shift from one shore to the other, from ignorance and wanting more, to appreciating what he had. And all he could do was put his hands together. And so will you join me in expressing our deepest appreciation for life and all that it contains by reciting the Namo Gasho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu.
Thank you, Sensei. That was a wonderful Dhamma talk. Please stand for the closing gatha, Ohigan 2 on page 262 of the Purple Book. Butsu.
Namo Amida 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 Butsu.
Are there any announcements?
Sorry, I didn't see it move. But I just wanted to thank everyone who helped with the chow mein, especially the BWA members that helped serve the tea and the drinks. And I want to thank Sofa, Mai, Sarah, Ty, it's Tan and Tien and Frankie. Those people really helped out a lot, and they stayed all day and we learned from each other. Want to thank them very much for helping. And all the other ladies who helped in the backgrounds. But I also wanted to remind everybody that May 18th is the Bay District BWL conference. And if you look in the Sangha, there will be an application blank. So if anyone has any questions, please refer to Nancy Davelin, Barbara Dinkelspiel, Jan Berklacher, or myself, Claire. And luckily, Enmanji BWA is going to subsidize $20 of the registration fee. The registration would be $40, but because Enmanji BWA will subsidize $20 of it, so for each BWA member only, they will do $20. And for those others that are interested in non-members, this year they're opening it up to spouses, friends, whoever would like to come, but they are $40 from Enmanji. So remember the date, look in the Sangha, and there should be another form. This one was in last month's, but there should be another form. Nancy?
There's a tile on the wall on the side.
There's a sign-up sheet.
There's the forms available on the hall.
Oh, there are forms available in the hall if anybody would like. But thank you.
For those of you that weren't aware, yesterday there was a junior YBA conference in Palo Alto. And we don't have a junior YBA here, but the theme of their conference was Pokemon related. Instead of the 6 paramitas, they call it the 6 Pokemitas. And so if you have any relatives, any children, grandchildren, whoever, that want to go to any of the junior YBA events, even though we don't have a junior YBA here, you're more than welcome to attend these events. So if you're interested, don't feel like just because we don't have a YBA, you can't go. Also, on April the 21st, there is this film, Carving the Divine, that's going to be shown in Alameda, and we have a service that day, but there are some people that are going to be leaving Enmanji to go to Alameda. They will provide lunch for us, and at the place where they're showing this film, there's also a Buddhist art showing that's in that same building. So if anybody is interested in going, please let Diane know. We do have some people that are interested, and we're trying to arrange for some rides. And the last thing was, as some of you know, the BCA has this category of individual members, and included in that are the individual youth members. We do have some of those here at Enmanji, and at our National Council meeting, it was announced that Bishop Harada is going to try to have a once-a-month service for those youth members, and I believe it's going to be done virtually. So if you're in that category, or if you have children or grandchildren that you would be that may be interested in being a youth member, the cost to be a youth member is only, I think we're still $50 here. Is that correct, Lauren, wherever you are?
It's $60.
Oh, $60 here, okay. So for people under the age of 30, they are eligible to be a youth member of BCA. So thank you very much.
I'd like to say a few words about the movie Carving the Divine. I met the director and filmmaker Yuji Seki, great young person from Japan. And although he made this film, and it's won award at London's Rain Dance Festival and other international festivals for film and so forth, he really hasn't recouped to really making this film. His father is one of these masters who carves these statues. But the reason I'm bringing him up is that what he did after he made the film, he realized that he had to have a following of people. And so he started interviewing scholars and ministers to talk about different Buddhist and Japanese religions. And so if you go on, I think, YouTube, and I don't know how all that's done, but Carving the Divine, he has all these things, and it's brought in a lot of interest toward Buddhism from people who have no thought of that, and it's because they're interested in the arts and realize all the dedication it takes to become one of these master carvers. So yeah, if you can't make it in April, hopefully there'll be other showings throughout BCA, over time, and if you could support that. But anyway, I think it's worthwhile to keep that in mind. Carving the Divine.
Sorry, lots of announcements today, keeping you a little longer. I just wanted to mention the manju making class that we're having, the Hoji Manju class we're having on the 31st. So we have 8 people signed up, and if you're interested, you need to let me know so that, because RSVP is required so we can get the right amount of ingredients. And then the other thing that we have coming up on June 9th, it's a Sunday, is imagawayaki. Learning how to do, so a demonstration of how to make that using those hot irons and the on-field pancake type of thing. So that will be on Sunday, June 9th at 9 a.m. The Manju class is at 10 a.m. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, the mind's going. I just also wanted to thank Sachi, Lance, and Nancy for instigating and doing the White Elephant Sale for BWA. It was a very successful event for us, and they just had a few items left, but they were able to give it to Goodwill. But thank you very much for helping. And I also want to recognize the head chef for Sensei Akahoshi. She is here today, Karen Akahoshi. So welcome to Enmanji.
We'd like to thank Reverend Akahoshi for officiating today's service and for your drama message today, Sensei. Also, thank you to George Lau for setting up the Ohigan and reading the concho. Thank you, Dr. Kent Matsuda, for playing the organ. And thank you to the March Toban for the flowers and the offerings. Everyone is invited for light refreshments in the hall until 4 p.m. today. If you have not had a chance to do Oshoku and wish to do so, please offer incense before leaving the hondo. And thank you again for attending today's Ohigan service.